Hello, friends. Welcome back to your Daily Detroit. It is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I am Staes coming to you for our first episode from the Grand Hotel at the Mackinac Policy Conference. Well, first episode for 2025. And joining me to talk all about it is none other than Devon O'Reilly. How are you?
I feel honored to be your first guest. You know, you never know what the weather's going to be like in Mackinac, but we are doing really well so far. It's pretty beautiful.
Let's be honest. Are you a guest or are you family at this point?
I mean, this is my 10th Mackinac Policy Conference. You pick up a few things. You see a lot of familiar faces now. At this point, I feel like I know more people than I don't know at this conference, which is it's kind of fun, but also very daunting because there's always a conversation to be had.
And there's going to be a lot of conversations that we are going to have. There are so many things that are stacked up for this for this whole coverage of Mackinac, including a conversation with the head of the Belle Isle Conservancy, talking about I-375 with someone else, talking about investments. There's over a dozen conversations that producer Cheyenne has helped line up for us, and I can't wait to bring all of this. This is why we make this big trip up here as Daily Detroit. And for you, I know it's great for you to be plugged into everything.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I cherish every year. For those of you who watch or listen, I will be moving on to a new position after this Mackinac Policy Conference, but it's definitely something where in taking my new position, I made sure it was the kind of position that came to Mackinac every year because you need to be here. The people need to be here. This is where stuff gets done. These are where the big conversations are had. This is where you move the needle. And I never want to not be part of moving the needle in some way, even if it's just minute.
I think that's a big thing to share, and people need to understand. One of the reasons why I consider it a priority to come up here, and I don't get paid to do this, this is something I think is important for coverage, is this is where a lot of decisions are made and connections are made on things that really impact Detroit and Metro Detroit. And if you're not part of, if you're not on the menu, you're the meal kind of thing.
Things can get accelerated here, and you and I have had a lot of conversations about that, about how painfully slowly, bureaucracy moves and government moves. And it's not that this necessarily changes anything, but you can have conversations up here that can just move things along faster because instead of going through all sorts of red tape and different conversations, you have one conversation with the decision maker, and that can actually get things going.
When I worked in corporate communications, I learned a great thing from a mentor, which is never have a conversation where somebody has to ask their parents. And I mean that in a corporate way or in a decision way or even in a nonprofit way. You always want to get to the person who can make the decision. Everything else is just kind of filler time.
Yeah, and that's kind of the ethos of Mackinac is having the decision makers all there. Everybody is somebody, and I mean that. I mean, I don't mean it just like everyone's important. All of us are important here because we're here at Mackinac, right? So everyone just becomes an important voice, someone who needs to be heard from, or someone who can have a voice in any conversation. And I think that's what makes Mackinac really cool. And everybody has their own agenda, different groups here. Jeremy, we've got all sorts of topics, right, this year. So there's no shortage of different things to be discussed. But you come here, you focus on what you want to get done, who you want to talk to. Chances are, if there's someone here who you want to talk to, I don't care how big they are. I was, just sitting behind, I won't say a senator and a House of Representatives. If I really wanted to talk to them about something, I could have just turned around and started talking to them. I'll save that for when I have something important to say.
Well, if you've got things as a listener, as a member of our Daily Detroit community that you want us to get into, dailydetroit@gmail.com. I'll be looking at my email all week. And as we get stuff out there, get newsletters out there, that kind of stuff. So let's get into the big thing that we're going to talk about today. There's a new poll dropped by the Detroit Regional Chamber done by the Glengariff Group. They conducted this live telephone survey of 600 registered Michigan voters. Now, some people might be like 600 voters. That's kind of how this works in reality as far as waiting and polling. And polling is actually quite expensive to do, quality polling. This was taken between May 5th and 8th, 2025, with a margin of error of plus minus 4%. This was 80% cell phones and a portion on landlines. We'll move fast as we can on this. We're going to talk about national trends, governor's race, Senate race. So nationally, more than 53% of registered Michigan voters say the nation's economy is on the wrong track, 36% on the right track. Independent voters say the nation's economy is on the wrong track by a 2-to-1 margin. And overall, statewide, President Donald Trump's approval rating in Michigan is 46%. Any quick takes?
No, that kind of tracks with what we're seeing. People are still dissatisfied. So let's take any political leanings out of it, the fact of the matter is people are still dissatisfied with where the direction of the country is heading. People are still pessimistic about that. And the independents being 2-1, saying we're still in the wrong direction, tells me that, any kind of Trump bump, whatnot, is over. He's pretty unpopular. People still feel, regardless of what they felt about Biden, they now feel with Trump the same way, that things are still going the wrong direction. So he didn't fix it.
And already in a few conversations, although not named, there is an uncertainty in the air around whether it's federal programs for nonprofits, whether it's business support, whether it's what is the business environment going to look like. So many businesses have so many inputs, even if they don't do business overseas, this whole tariffs conversation, everything else, businesses dislike uncertainty.
I was just going to say that, Jared. You couldn't summarize it better. Essentially, there's no better way to boil it down. I won't talk around it. Uncertainty is just a killer, a paralyzer for the business community. You can hear the Chamber's CEO, Sandy Barua, talk about it. You can hear Machato's Glenn Stevens, when you talk about tariffs, talk about it, who are experts in this. And that's what they'll say. The reason the business community is not doing stuff right now, they're pulling back, is because there is uncertainty. One way or another. You can't just say this is good for business, bad for business. When you're in a situation where one day tariffs can be one thing, another day a new policy can come out that completely catches people off guard. No matter what, the business just step back and say, whoa, wait a minute. We're just going to pull everything back. We're going to tighten our belts for a little while and see how this blows over. And that's exactly what's happening.
The answer will be to do nothing.
Yeah.
With all the uncertainty, whatever you think of the policy themselves, the answer will consistently be, let's do nothing and let's play it safe. Okay, let's get into this governor's race, because I think this is really
came out.
Yeah.
Now, not too different than what we expected.
I want to say, I don't usually, all right, maybe I do like a victory lap.
I've taken one with you. We've taken one before.
But so here's the thing. A lot of pundits who are involved in this stuff literally thought we were crazy, literally thought we were nuts. And we didn't have any advanced knowledge of this, but we know the vibes, and we know when we talk to our audience that is, look, I have no illusions that our audience leans a little left, but we have so many people who listen to this show of different political persuasions that I feel like often I can get a good vibe on how people are feeling, as opposed to so much of news now, which is hyper siloed.
Yeah, I think we try to do a good job of taking the temperature of the room and the area. And yeah, I think one of the things we said pretty point blank was that we felt that Duggan was going to pull at least equally from Republicans and Democrats. He wouldn't be a detriment to either party specifically. He would just be a party crasher overall.
And when I saw some of the Republican attacks on him, I knew that was gonna happen. But we now have the data. So among registered voters, Democrat Jocelyn Benson has more than 34% of the vote. Republican John James, 34%. And Duggan, 21.5% in this survey. He is ahead in every matchup in Metro Detroit with between 35 and 40% of the vote. I will also mention he greatly leads from another poll, the city of Detroit. But his big challenge is going to be outstate name ID. Outstate, he's only polling like 9 to 12%. But I feel like this is a surmountable thing. But it's an interesting conundrum. I even the pollster said this is a unique example. Online, I've heard a lot of people tell me that this is impossible, that he's no Jesse Ventura, that sort of thing. I think that you got to look at this race without partisan blinders.
Definitely. It is interesting because I guess my perception, again, I have my Detroit-colored or Metro Detroit-colored glasses on. I just assume people in Saginaw, in Kalamazoo, if they knew nothing, they knew Mayor Duggan was a longtime mayor of Detroit, and things were going well in Detroit. I just thought that's people's baseline perception. If you ask them off the street, what do you know about Mike Duggan? He's the mayor of Detroit, and Detroit is coming back. So I'm surprised to hear not as many people kind of are feeling...
They don't even know. It's a name ID issue.
And even that is kind of surprising to me. But like you said, I think it can be overcome with dollars, marketing. And on the way up here, I saw 4 Mike Duggan billboards on 75 coming up to the conference. So he's got the money to really put his name out there.
The only political billboards that I really saw outside of Mike Duggan was, of course, Mark Hackle. And I joke, if listeners don't know, every year there's a Mark Hackle billboard. This year she shared it with Candace Miller, talking about Selfridge, but it was still Mark Hackle. It's a running gag. I don't mean it as like a knock. It's just funny because he always gets a billboard somewhere in mid-Michigan. He's the Macomb County executive, by the way, if you don't know.
No, why would he? But I thought Duggan's were actually really clever. I was like looking at them. They all speak to what he's trying to do in terms of being independent. I think one was like, angry with red, tired of blue, and it was Mike Duggan. And the other one was Independence with apostrophe S, Independence Day, November 4th, 2025.
The one I saw was that Michigan needs a mayor.
I saw that one too. Exactly. See, bravo to the marketing team, whoever he's using. I'm sure they're paying for it a lot of money, but you know what? It's well worth. Those are some good billboards. And
he, at the conference, will be appearing, I think, twice with Dan Gilbert.
Yeah.
We know where that is aligned. One stat that's interesting in this governor's race, okay, in this overall poll, is that Mike Duggan has higher name recognition in Metro Detroit than Jocelyn Benson, and that was stunning to me, that more people knew who the mayor was in Metro Detroit than Jocelyn Benson, who is literally the Secretary of State on all the things. Like, that's a name that's everywhere, right?
No, Duggan's bigger in Metro. Duggan's name ID in Metro Detroit is just, it has to be astronomical. So that part actually does not surprise me.
And if this were a Metro Detroit race, he'd win the governorship very handily. Let's talk about the primaries. Obviously, Duggan isn't going to be a part of this as an independent voter. Now, this is about voters who plan to vote in the general election, but not specifically in a primary. Benson has 59% of the Democratic primary vote. Gilchrist just 7% and Swanson 8%. That really leans to that name ID issue. We've had Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist on the show before a few times. Always love to have him on. Of course, we'll gladly have any of these candidates on. But it shows that name ID of being lieutenant governor just isn't the squeeze.
Yeah, that name ID obviously isn't breaking through. Benson, again, this is where she does have an advantage in terms of the name ID. She's on everything. You see that there. So I think that's where name ID is definitely benefiting her.
On the Republican side, John James, 42%, Tudor Dixon, 20%, Mike Cox, 11%, Eric Nesbitt, 5%. And I am rounding the percentages because audio, it's hard to deal with numbers. But top line, John James, 42, Tudor Dixon, 20%. Polls generally show that John James is the strongest candidate against Democrats. You go into the crosstabs, Tudor Dixon would just get obliterated. So It's an interesting look.
I'm wondering what we're seeing here. You know what this reminds me of is basketball, which I'm a basketball fan. Sometimes you see, you have the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference, and there's just stronger teams in one conference. And so you have these teams that aren't very good who get really far. They go to the Eastern Conference finals, they go to the finals, and then they play the Western Conference team, and they just get annihilated. John James, to me, is not a strong candidate.
Really?
He's lost.
Really?
Jared, how many elections has he lost, man? He's got a losing record.
He will run for everything, including dog catcher.
He'll run for everything, and he gets beat for most things. I'm just surprised. I just don't see him as a strong candidate. And the fact that he's doing so well, maybe it's a weak conference. Maybe the Republicans have a weak conference right now, and he would actually just get demolished by another candidate.
So I know a lot of people who like him, and I think that he would be somebody who would be very strong if he had. I know there's always timing and all the other stuff, but he's only had one term in there, right? And if he built his name ID up a little bit bigger, did a few things that had like bills attached to it, I'm not like, I don't want to discount him, but I think timing is everything, and I think he's too early.
He tries very hard, and I've had a couple interactions with him. He's a very nice guy. Personally, he seems like a very nice guy. I just think he's just kind of always on politically, and I think some people might see through that, but he'll have donors. I mean, certainly if he's got Trump's backing, that'll be good in the Republican Party. But as you just said, as Trump's poll numbers continue to dip in Michigan and possibly continue to fall, which I'll just say they probably will. Sorry to disappoint anybody. It could become a hindrance, right? This is the other thing we have to think about is as 2026 approaches, if Donald Trump is polling in the 30s with voters, or even low 40s with voters, he has now become an anchor for these politicians. And so James may be trying to no avail to distance himself from him. So I don't know.
It'll win you the primary, but in the general, it might sink you, but we don't know. It's still a long way out. All right. Final part of this poll that I want to talk about. Democrats who plan to vote in the general election we're going to talk about the U.S. Senate now. Democrats who plan to vote in the general election prefer U.S. Representative Haley Stevens at 34%. Abdul El Sayed, who is former guest of the show a couple of times. He is at 24%. And Mallory McMurrow, who is a very strong online presence, very dynamic, also been a guest of the show. All these people I'd love to have back, 12%. So on the Democratic side, it really shows me like the online energy that I see, even in our member Discord. A lot of people are big into McMurrow and El Sayed. Haley Stevens, right now, this early on, kind of has a first mover advantage. I wonder how long this is going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. She's been running a lot, and she's been doing well. Obviously, Haley has been in Congress. So does she have that advantage of name ID because of, she's ran campaigns before. People have seen her ads. I remember seeing her ads. She was the chief of Obama's auto rescue, according to her ads. So I still remember that. So she's definitely aligned herself with Democrats, Obama. She was in his camp. So I wonder if it's name ID with her. I'm not really sure why, frankly. I'm surprised that McMurrow isn't polling better. But again, for a lot of people, she's not a name.
Yeah, she just had a book that came out. She has had multiple viral clips, really strong stuff. But, in Michigan, sometimes that online stuff just doesn't translate as well.
No.
And it's kind of common here. It's also common. We go for candidates like when I think of Haley Stevens, and people can feel free to correct me, but when I think of Haley Stevens, I think of that same Alyssa Slotkin wing of the party.
Oh, yeah.
And there's very aligned there where I think when I think about Abdul El Sayed and, him writing about Medicare for all and things like that, I think of him on that side of the party. I think McMurrow, too, who's not taking any PAC money on that side of the wing of things, too.
So wait, frame that again. So you're saying that you see Stevens and McMurrow kind of on one side of the party?
I see Stevens like very much as a moderate. I see McMurrow kind of in between, and I think I see Abdul El Sayed as like on the more like Bernie Sanders wing, AOC wing.
I think that's a fair way to kind of put them all in a graph or a chart and kind of say where they go. So we'll see. I don't know what that means. You're right. I have nothing more to say.
And it's still early out. Republicans, this isn't a race. Maybe things will change, but Bill Huizenga, 64%. Mike Rogers is up above Bill Huizenga, 64 to 15.
Again, you've got Mike Rogers just has the name recognition. He's run for things. People know his name. He's safe, I guess, as much as you can say. I'll call back to the same thing about the the week conference basketball reference. Maybe that's the case, but we'll see. It's early, man. I don't want to say too much because it's so early.
Well, it will be interesting to see the head-to-head matchups because when you go into these crosstabs, and I'll link to the full poll in the show notes and everything. But when you look at the head-to-head matchups, it really does matter who's with what. So, like Stevens matches up very well against Republicans, whereas right now McMurrow and El Sayed don't as much.
This is all sports. Analogies. We're in the middle of the Eastern or the conference finals in the NBA that I'm glued to. So I'm just seeing all the parallels here in terms of it's all about matchups. That's why you have the Pacers and Knicks playing each other. Some people wouldn't even say they're the best teams in the conference, but they happen to play the right teams at the right time. And you're right. It's just going to come down to who's matching up against who because some have much better matchups against certain types of candidates. Others are much better against other types of candidates. We just don't know.
Okay, I'll leave you with this then. I know obviously you're a Pistons guy, as am I, but who's your team right now?
I love the story of the Knicks. Let's go Knicks. I want the Knicks. I know they beat the Pistons, but it was a valiant effort. I'm not a big fan of the Pacers. New York, when New York is going and Madison Square Garden is hosting playoff games, it's just such an amazing atmosphere. I love watching them on TV. So let's go Knicks.
All right. Well, with that, we are going to end this Tuesday edition of Your Daily Detroit from the porch of the Grand Hotel. We will have episodes all week. We're also going to have a special episode guest hosted with Annalise Frank of Axios, who will be joining us. I'm very much looking forward to that. Somebody who's on the ground doing a ton of reporting around Detroit. But for now, thank you so much to our members on Patreon, patreon.com/Daily Detroit, because local media needs local support to survive. I'm Staes.
I'm Devon O'Reilly.
Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.